before I introduce our distinguished guest today, I would like to say that the format is we are going to have Jim and Alice speak together for about 45 minutes. They have a set of questions that they're going to discuss. And during that time, we're going to be coming around with note cards. If you have any of your own questions, we would like you to write those on the note cards. If you're a student, please put an S on the card. And my partner, Bev Hartman, and I will be coming around to pick up those cards so that after they have finished their conversation, we're going to open it up to the audience for some questions. Alice is great at looking at cards and talking all at the same time and asking questions, so you just watch, she can do it. And this will be a lot of fun. So plenty of time to listen. And when you're finished, there's some wonderful handouts prepared by Alice Kleeman that you will get on your way out. A couple of you got them on the way in, but they're really for on the way out, okay? All right, let's get going. You ready? Okay. Alice Kleeman. Alice worked at Menlo Atherton as the college advisor for 20 years. Since her retirement, she has continued to help first-generation students find their way to college through MA, the Boys and Girls Club of the Peninsula, and the Redwood City Library. During her career, Alice was active in the National Association for College Admission Counseling, the Western Association for College Admission Counseling, and the College Board. For more than a dozen years, she served on the faculty of the College Board Summer Admission Institute, a 5-day professional development opportunity for new college admission counselors. When Alice retired, a scholarship was begun in her name, and the students have been awarded so far are experiencing success in college selection based on motivation. But, as Alice says, her proudest accomplishment is her 3 children who all currently teach in the Menlo Park City School District grades 8, 5, and 3, unless you want to adjust that, Alice. That's still right, okay. All right, here today, Jim Rawlins is the Assistant Vice President for Student Services and Enrollment Management and Director at the Office of Admissions at the University of Oregon. He leads recruitment and outreach efforts to freshmen and transfer students, including both U.S. and international students. Over his career, Jim has served as a delegate to and as president of the Pacific Northwest Association for College Admission Counseling. He has more recently served as president of the National Association for College Admission Counseling, NACAC, and was on its board of directors from 2011 to 2014. He currently chairs the NACAC Governance and Nominating Committee. He is a frequent presenter at NACAC, ACT, and College Board conferences on subjects as varied as multiracial identity, higher education demographic trends, and admissions policy. He holds a bachelor's degree in music performance from Florida State University and a master's in music performance from Southern Methodist University. Jim is a candidate for the PhD in Higher Education Leadership and Policy Studies from the University of Washington. Please join us in a really warm MA welcome for Jim and Alice.
Thank you, thank you. It's always nice to be back at MA, and thank you, Charlene. Charlene never says this, but her program is unique, and there are very few areas where there are programs like this, and it's been an important value to her and to all of us to keep the programs free of charge, but donations are always welcome. There, she would never say that, I can. She also took care of one of the things I was going to do, which was sort of to generally see who's here. But do we have any students here tonight? Because I was going to say, if we have some students here tonight, if you have a question for us, put a big S on top of your question card, and you'll rise to the top of the question pack. So somewhere between the extremes of leaving your child entirely to his or her own devices when it comes to college admission, and at the other extreme, incurring fines and even jail sentences for overhelping.
Too soon.
Too soon. Sorry, never too soon. Somewhere on that spectrum, there's a place for you as a parent in the college admission process with your child or children. And Finding your spot on that spectrum is one of our goals for tonight, and I think you'll find that it's not the same for any two families, or sometimes even for any two children within the same family. I'll add here that parents who didn't go to college themselves often feel that they just don't have a role in this, and that's just not true. Sometimes they can be the absolutely best cheerleaders and the best people to connect their children with the resources that they need. But every family is different, and we're hoping our goal tonight is to help you find a comfortable spot on that spectrum so you can even enjoy it. And when we send you home, we'll send you home with a list of questions to ask yourselves as you're going through the process with your children, and that will kind of keep you on the right track, even though your right track is not the same as anyone else's right track. So we have 14 questions that we're going to use to kind of structure our conversation, and those questions will be a handout at the end of the evening. So first, by way of introduction and for some context, we will tell you about our own experiences. I think people are really curious, Jim. What's it like in a family when one of the parents is a college admission professional? And can you tell us about your role both as a parent and a college administrator?
Absolutely, and I think we do have one or two brave students who showed up around a bunch of parents tonight, so kudos to you. So one of the main things that, as I started in this profession, I think it's been 27 years ago now, and I'm just going to keep it real. We're going to keep it very real tonight in a few ways. As I was a person in the admissions profession who's like, I'm only a few years older than these students. I can so relate to them. And now I'm so much older than these parents, but I can still relate to them. We all go through these phases in life. Kind of building up for that for me, there are a lot of things I've picked up along the way, many of which are the things you don't want to do, that I knew as I started to have my own kids go through this process were going to be good guideposts for me about what not to do, what to do. I am the dad of two who have gone through this experience, and even despite their dad being an admissions person, and it was really fun. Alice knows I was texting them today, even just checking in with them. I've got a daughter who's now 24, who went through this process and lived to tell, while I was president of that big national association that Charlene was mentioning. And it did not stop her from telling me in one of her emotion-filled moments of her senior year, Dad, you have no idea what you're talking about. So just remember that. But she did great. She's in grad school now. She's a few hours away from me, so I can only do so much. And my son is actually a freshman in college right now. One of the spoilers I'll just go ahead and give away is that both my daughter and son ended up going to the University of Oregon, which some people might just go, oh, well, that's predictable. But there's a lot of ways in which it wasn't. The simplest of which, I was actually at an institution in Colorado when my daughter was going through high school. And she very proudly looked for all kinds of places all over the country to go to college, knowing she would get away from home. And she picked Oregon, where her mom went, which was a whole time zone away. And 3 weeks later, I got interviewed for a director of admissions there. And so I was asking her today, I said, what did I do too much of? What did I do too little of? You know, just be honest with me, you can tell me. She goes, well, for starters, you followed me. So that's a saga none of you will really have to worry about, I guess, but you never know what's going on out in this room. But I think it was really helpful to just see and to work at an institution, and some of you in this room might even work with higher education yourselves. Our students, this is one of their biggest first moments to fly with their own wings. And when we give them that chance, it's going to serve them so well so much later. So I really am encouraged when my son and daughter both said, well, Dad, you actually weren't very present for these parts, and it was actually kind of a relief. So if I can do it, so can you is going to be part of the theme tonight.
Okay, and my story is that a lot of you do know my three children who teach in Menlo Park, 3rd, 5th, and 8th grade. And I had the job at Menlo Atherton as the college advisor only for 2 of the 3 of them. But as soon as I took that job, I said, I'm going to do this job in the same way that I parent. And we'll learn a little bit more about that later. I spent 20 years at MA, and I loved those kids as if they were my own kids. I just want to say that my 3 children followed their college admission path very, very differently from each other. I'll give you one example now, and I'm sure more will come up. But my son did all of his college stuff without showing me anything or asking me anything. And then when it was all sent and gone, he said, "Here, Mom, take a look if you want." He was also the one where I wasn't sure he was actually going to meet the deadlines, get the stuff in, and this was how I looked for his senior year. But he did it, and if he hadn't done it, that would have been okay too. If you like the idea of learning what a college admission professional thinks about how to parent through it, this is a book that I've enjoyed called Dear Parents, a Field Guide for College Preparation by John McGee. He interviewed many professionals, college admission professionals, and they talked about their own experiences. So first, I think we can agree that parenting through the college admission process isn't something that begins in the junior year of high school. Certainly not in the senior year of high school. I think it can begin when children are very, very, very young. And you're not going to mention college. The word doesn't even need to come up. But what you're doing is preparing kids to be self-advocates, preparing them to handle their own business, preparing them to tackle tasks on their own, finding ways to support them. You want them to become independent and competent. In fact, there was a great quote in this book. I hope I can find it in about 2 seconds. This wonderful woman says, our task as parents has been, we're trying to raise a great 35-year-old, not a great college applicant or even a great college student. I love that idea. So it can begin when they're really little, but I think the key is that preparation all along the way needs to be age appropriate. So let's talk a little bit about what age appropriate means. Let's talk about the kinds of tasks students will have to tackle while they are applying to college. Jim, can you tell us a little bit about age appropriate or inappropriate behavior that you've seen either in your family or in your office?
Sure. Yeah, and I think that's an important pairing that we talk about inappropriate and appropriate, because sometimes it helps to know what not to do. But I really love this idea. The quote from the book Alice shared, I just think is fantastic. This idea of what you're doing all along the way here isn't about these immediate goals. It's about this much longer term thing. And one of the things we so love to see in higher education is students who have their own voice, even if it's not done forming, who make their own decisions, even if they're not all perfect yet or ever will be. And it's a gradual process. And again, you don't want to just suddenly flip that switch at the last minute. But knowing, and again, I appreciate so much having had the unusual opportunity to see this unfolding before my own kids got to this age, it is a developed thing over time. It was funny, my daughter was kind of like you were mentioning. She was one of these that didn't want help, didn't want me to look at her essays, any of that kind of thing. Although she did confess at age 24 today that she now wishes I had looked at her essays. You saw it on my phone. But you know, some of these, you can see these things early on. I always connect this story back to when my daughter was a second grader. We're a big music family. And we showed up for a school musical or something like that at her little elementary school, and all the other parents came up to me and my wife, and they're like, "We're just so excited, you know, your daughter's got the lead in the musical, and we're just so excited, isn't it great?" And we looked at each other like, she's got the lead? She didn't tell us a thing. She didn't want us to know. She just wanted it to be her thing. So in that regard, when it came time for college, that kind of die was cast. She was confident, she was independent. we figured this is a good thing, and it drove us nuts sometimes, but we let it go. And these things you might be forming are the age-appropriate little kernels that are laid out there. And some of those are even things that you can find something, again, without uttering college, without telling your 5-year-old they need to wear a Stanford shirt already, can be part of those just more general building blocks that are going to give them that resilience and strength that goes a long way. Our son, on the other hand, wouldn't even try out for the school musical. He's the kind that wanted us to look at everything along the way, and I offered a few things every now and then, but it was often accompanied by, well, what do you think? So we had very different son and daughter in this regard, but you had to find your way to balance out, giving them a little bit of a boost, but then stepping back and letting them rise or fall. Our daughter was very high achieving, very highly competent, but she also missed a few deadlines her senior year, and I learned about them after she missed them. And that was part of her learning process.
She's still okay, right?
She actually lived. She actually did.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, Jim and I have a friend who was the dean of admission at Harvey Mudd, and he's also been an independent educational counselor, and he's also been a high school counselor. And I was chatting with him about doing this session with Jim, and he said, well, here's a story for you from Harvey Mudd. He said, people come into the front office there and they're signing up for a tour. And he said, I came out of my office, my dean's office, and I saw a dad, and the dad was signing up for the tour. And I wondered where his child was, but you know, people have often come from far away and they want to stop and use the restroom first, so I figured he was doing that. And this dad did have with him a smaller child, a little girl. She was clutching a doll. And then he realized that was the child he was taking the tour with. She was 12, and he actually said to the tour, you all go on, and he took this dad and 12-year-old into his own office and had a good little chat with them about age appropriateness. If you asked 100 kids that I've worked with or more, what's one of the things that I say to them all the time? They would repeat this. Colleges are not asking 17-year-olds to do anything that 17-year-olds are not capable of doing. Do you agree?
I mostly agree, but on the rare occasions...
The credit card thing.
Yeah. On the rare occasions I see things that test the limit of that theory for me, I'll remind you all, you don't have to be liked by every college, and if a college asks unreasonable things, maybe it's a sign that's not a good place for that particular student.
Well, my belief as I was parenting, my kids would tell you this, is, and this is a hard one, I'm not saying this is easy, but if there's a task that your child is capable of doing, the child should be doing that task and not you. And I believe that for the students I worked with here, but also for my own children. So whether it's completing a test registration form or a college application or monitoring deadlines or contacting a college office to schedule a tour or to ask a question, these are things that kids are capable of doing. And as soon as they're capable of doing, I believe they should be doing them, which is why my children made their own lunches from first grade on, because it occurred to me that they could put a cheese stick in a bag just about as well as I could. And that is one of the questions I think we can ask ourselves. Is my child capable of doing this? So who should be doing it? Now, I don't know how that played out in your family or in your office, but do you sometimes see students, parents tackling tasks that you expect of students, or do students pretty much tackle their own? And I know you told me once, sometimes parents overstep just a little bit.
Oh, just maybe, Alice. And I'll tell you, in the many years I've seen many examples of this, let me be very clear here. As much as we are mortified when parents overstep that line, there's only one other person more mortified, and that's going to be your own son or daughter, I bet. I've gotten emails over the years or phone calls that start with phrases like, it's really important that you know my son doesn't know I'm making this call. And honestly, my first thought is, then you shouldn't be making this call. But there's a lot of these things that are like that, and I think many of them come from a good place of not wanting your student to feel rejection or confusion. But this is part of the experience. It is part of the lesson. And so very much, and certainly it's about practical things. No one should have to fill out an application for their student or sign up for the test. But you also, in a more emotional way, you shouldn't get between your student and disappointment. I think, honestly, applying to some selective colleges out there and hearing no once or twice is one of the most adulting moments, if you will, of this process that is so important for them to experience. And oftentimes when students are going for this, they know good and well it's a college that's hard to get into, but they want to try it. And it's a really cool thing that they're willing to put themselves out there and see what happens. And if they do that, and they get a no, and you get between them and that, you're really robbing them of one of the most developmental and really meaningful pieces of that. So that's a very much overstepping the bounds. I am going to throw out, as recently as last week, one of my counseling staff who was on duty, I asked her how phone calls were doing for the day. And she goes, "Oh, Jim, it's just another regular day. You know, I've had 5 calls today from parents who claim they are the student, and they're trying to change their voice, thinking that I'm talking to their student." I'm not exaggerating this, folks. Do not be that parent. Your students should be memorable. You should never be memorable in my office. Please just remember that.
I'm thinking of a time where a parent walked into my office when I was working here, and she came to get the SAT registration form. And I said, "Oh, I'd really love to give that to your son. He can come down here and pick that up." And she said, "Well, he's very, very busy." And I said, "Well, I'm here before school and during brunch, during lunch, after school, so I hope he can find a time, because when a student comes in to do that, it's a chance for me to chat a minute, get to know the student." And she said, "Well, I'm just going to tell you what's going on in our family. I've agreed for my son's senior year to be his secretary. I've agreed to be his secretary. I will tackle all the administrative work for his college applications, and he'll be a student and an athlete." She then went on to say, and you never want to hear a sentence that starts with the words, "Who are you to say?" But she said, "Who are you to tell our family what to do?" But I think sometimes it's a real leap of faith, and I'm going to tell you my absolute favorite parenting story from my family, because I had an out-of-body experience while I was doing this, looking at myself saying, "Did you really just say that and do that?" My son, has anybody had my son for their kid's teacher? Yeah, a few of you out there. I did get his permission to tell this story. He was a big soccer player when he was a kid. Soccer, soccer, soccer all the time. And he came up to me one day and he said, "Mom, I think it would be so cool if I could go play soccer in Europe." Me, watching me say, "I do too. That would be so great. So let's see. All you have to do is find a program that will take you there and earn the money. And you can go play soccer in Europe. You have my blessing to go do that." Did I just say that? But I'm telling you this as an example of never assuming. He was 12. He went out that week and got a job. He found the program, he earned the money, he played soccer in Europe, and when the following year he said, "You know what would be cool, Mom? Mountain biking in New England." I said, "You know what to do," and he did it again. And I only tell you this story both because I surprised myself, but I think our kids can surprise us with what they are capable of doing. And this had nothing to do with college until he wrote his college essay, which I saw afterwards, which was about all his travels all over the world throughout high school and what they'd meant to him because he'd planned them and paid for them. I didn't know, but sometimes we have to trust that they can do this. So let's talk a little bit about the kinds of resources parents can find and students can find to help them with the college application process. When I talk about resources, I think of them as people and stuff, okay? High schools have people and stuff to help with this. Colleges have people and stuff. And they also have policies around who can use the people and stuff and how they can use them. And also, of course, people take advantage of resources outside the school. So I'm curious about your experience with that. What are some of the resources, people and stuff, at the colleges where you've worked? And how do parents and students access them? And are there policies that govern their access?
Some of the things that we see from the college side that really seem to help with families, both the student and the parents, are just simply the college counseling office itself. And sorry, but I'm going to just say it like it is. This is one of the best of all time right here, and there's several others associated with MA over the years. This school and several others in this neighborhood are the kind of places where we know you've got great resources that not every school and community has.
That's true.
So I'm just going to throw it out there. And so don't overthink this piece of it. As for starters, there are a lot of resources, and I think we should talk about some of those limits and policies in a second too. But just for starting this out, something as simple as knowing all the places you can go and realizing that the answer is a lot, not a few, for many things is very, very nice and comforting. Our generation, whoever wants to put themselves with me on that sinking boat, can remember a time where we had to go to the counseling office to literally get a course catalog to look up this kind of stuff. No longer a problem. But the problem we have now is there are so many places out there that want to be your resource for this, that if anything, you have to worry about running into things that are outdated, inaccurate, hyped. It is true that colleges can pay for better mentions on certain web pages that list a lot of things to put themselves up at the top of the list. Not all of us do that, but I'm just telling you it's out there. So you've got kind of that buyer's guide, if you will, to have that objective person in your corner in the form of the college counseling office and the staff that are there. The U.S. Department of Education even collects data from us in a way that is very objective and that you can't game. So if any of you get a chance to go to the Department of ed.gov website, and look up College Navigator. That's a great example of something that's always been there, always free, and always accessible.
College Navigator.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So that's the kind of thing that's out there. In general, to kind of move over into the idea of what should be the students, what should be the parents, most of this kind of information we're talking about so far is very much there for everybody. There is a point where we really want the students to be engaging in pieces of this, and especially when it comes down to the more people part of this and over to college admissions offices. I have a staff of almost 60 people, 4 of whom even live in this state because we get so many students from the state of California, for example. We want them to be accessible, we want them to be friendly, and we very much want it to be the student most often who's connecting with them to learn more, to ask questions, to talk about things. Many other colleges out there, including some that are very selective, who do interviews, will get very irritated if parents try to be the ones kind of interacting and saying, well, can I tell you about my son and his time playing soccer in Europe? That's not what they want to hear about. They want to hear from the student. And so some of those resources you're going to be pushed away from a little bit, and you need to understand it's in this spirit of not so much pushing you away, but wanting to bring that student in to have that engagement. Some of us, when you go to visit our campuses on a tour and you're like, well, we would like to talk with the admissions office. I got to tell you, that word "we" will kind of make some of us twitch a little bit, because what I'd love is for that student to go, I want to talk with an admissions counselor while I'm here. And then mom or dad goes, and where can I wait while they do that? That's a really neat moment, again, for that student to take the reins and run with that stuff. You may be kind of their coach behind the scenes about, all right, as you go around all these schools, what did you tell me matters to you? Oh, these things matter? Well, then just make sure you use these opportunities, because I hear those admissions counselors are great people to talk to. They're friendly, they don't even bite. But then along the way, you'll get those things. I could go on and on, but.
What about using resources outside the high school? As in independent counselors, and how do the college people look on that?
Back to that too soon punchline from a little bit ago. There are lots of people out there who will take your money. There are some that are terrific, but the bottom line is when you've got the great resources at the place that knows your school, your students, you really want to be able to tap into that as well. I want to be very clear that there's some great colleagues out there who are in that independent sphere out there. But I'm going to go find that person and I'll show them, I'll get this other help, usually ends badly. Come to the college counseling team and say, I really have this unusual need And I know I'm taxing you. Is there somebody who could help us by expanding on this a little bit more for my particular needs? Yes, I know a great person for that, and they're very trustworthy and reliable. It's kind of, you only would want to work with a reference.
And
to
you
kind of tap
know,
into that.
colleges are not asking 17-year-olds to do anything that 17-year-olds are not capable of doing. Have you ever heard that?
As a matter of fact, you're right, Alice.
Have you ever heard that? My experience at MA was that resources were plentiful, generous, and available to parents and students, with a special soft spot for parents who hadn't gone to college themselves, who really needed access to those resources. And yet, the resources are generous and available to parents as well as students, but at the same time, people were always overjoyed when it was the student who would seek the resources
Big time.
first. So sometimes parenting through the college admission process is affected by some kinds of special needs or special circumstances. And that could be anything from students who have learning differences to students who are undocumented, to students who have special talents, to students whose parents didn't go to college. So can you talk about your thoughts about the parent role when there are unusual circumstances?
Absolutely, and one of the things I really like about the way Alice just framed this, and thinking about a lot of different things that could fall into that, but this isn't usual kind of column, is that some of these are about what the student's needs or desires are, some are about the family situation. And again, especially for any of you who didn't go to college yourselves, we don't want this to be overwhelming, mysterious, intimidating. We don't want you or your student to ever feel like it's not for you because you didn't do this before. It's quite the opposite. Many of us that work in this profession got into it because college was such a difference maker for us. And there's nothing we love better than to be able to help students who are going through some of those same challenges we might have even gone through ourselves. So please know that. People that want to do this sure aren't in it for the money. They're in it because they want to be able to help families in this way. So first and foremost, know that things that seem challenging or unusual, it's perfectly okay to ask about them. It's preferable to ask about them. But again, some of these are going to come back to things that are a little tricky. Just to pick on a few of the things you rattled off here, one thing I talk about is certainly first-generation families. We don't expect you to know the lingo, but again, the college counseling office can really help you get off to a good start there. But we're going to work with you on that. Something like a student with learning disabilities or differences, for example, is a very different thing. The vast majority of colleges, including all the ones I've ever worked at, if we are to take things like a student's learning disability into account when we make an admissions decision, there's actually a lot of ways we're trying to follow ADA guidelines, federal guidelines, to basically say, well, some students, even if this is a part of who they are, they may not want us to know. And we're going to protect that student even from ways you want to approach this. So here's an example of something where special circumstances can play out a very particular way. If a student themselves tells us, for example, yes, I had some struggles in 9th grade, but I learned I had ADHD and I've since gotten some assistance with this, you'll see that my grades turned around after that. That's the kind of thing that we could see, oh, great. That really helps us understand what's going on here. We know we support students like this on this campus really well. Sounds like a nice outcome, isn't it? And it is. If the student didn't say that, and you call me up in May and say, by the way, I know you deny my son, and he doesn't know I'm calling, and you tell me this, we're going to do absolutely nothing with that because that student has not been the one to say, I want you to know this. So there's a few things like that that are going to play out in ways that are sometimes in a legal sense, but also just in a procedural sense, done where we're even going to look at the student's needs in a way that might sound counter to what you'd like for us to do. Many of these other things, whether it's about understanding the finances or special support services, are going to be the kinds of things that can absolutely be a family conversation, and that we're happy to involve you in that. And you might be able to help your student navigate some things that are a little funky and hard for them to explain themselves.
One of the things that I learned about students who have learning differences is that at most colleges, if they arrive and talk about learning differences, somebody will say, oh, isn't that nice? But if they say, learning disabilities, then they can qualify for accommodations. So there are services in the high school, accommodations in the college, but in the high school, it's the school that's responsible for providing the services. And at the colleges, it's the student who needs to self-advocate and request those accommodations. And that can be a big difference. I noticed when I was at MA that there was some really good work being done with students to sort of scaffold their self-advocacy skills when they needed accommodations. And I thought that was pretty important. That's kind of what you were talking about there.
Yep, I hear within what you're saying the concepts of self-reliance. I hear the age appropriateness and the kind of overtime piece of this. There's a lot of good in that.
Especially over time. In addition to having special circumstances, I think there are students who might want to take just a different path after high school. They might want to take a year off, or they might want to go into the military, or they might want to begin in community college, even if they're prepared for a four-year college, or maybe they want to go to work. And I think parents have to be really open to hearing those messages and hearing this, that the student might have a different agenda. Can you think of some times that you've worked with families negotiating different paths, not negotiating, but families who wanted to follow some different paths?
Yeah, maybe negotiating that with each other, I think is
Right,
part of what we're
that's what
getting
I
at
mean,
there,
yeah.
right, yeah. So, yeah, we see this more and more, and I think part of that's just the evolving nature of education itself. It's rooted in a lot of traditions. Well, this is not how it worked when I went to college, or this is not how it worked when I was 18. There is more and more of that, isn't there? And some of it's really, really neat. So I'd mainly say for any of these families where you either hear about this and you're like, wow, I wonder if my daughter realizes we could do this. And again, you're just putting it out there, not telling them whether it's a good fit for them or not. But this kind of thing can be a great opportunity. Gap years, deferrals, some of these things about going off to work for a while, to join the military. Sometimes these things are more financial than developmental. Sometimes they're both. There's a lot of growing flexibility by colleges to do this. I can remember a time 10 or 15 years ago where none of the public institutions around the country, which is all I've ever worked for, would ever have formal processes for what we call deferring a gap year student. So letting a student who looks really strong coming out of high school but really wants to have this experience know now that there's a place waiting for them a year later once they get done. And we became one of those institutions that does that on our campus a few years ago. Now, we had 27,000 applicants last year, and only 60 of them wanted this. But for that small group of students, if that was the thing they had decided they wanted, great, and we tried to find a way to help them make that work. We're starting to have some of them show up on our campus now with great stories. So before you rule some of these things out, whether it's when you start, how you start, starting at a community college and coming over to these things, we wouldn't be supportive of it if we didn't think students couldn't be successful at it. And so we're generally going to help your student with the many different ways they can get from point A to point Z or X or whatever, because there are so many of these paths and they can all work with the right conversation.
Well, I'm a huge fan myself of students beginning at a community college, and that gets truer and truer as I see students go off to four-year colleges and come back in a year, which is, I guess it's a reverse transfer. It can be painful, it can be stressful, but one of the words that I have always liked to use talking to students about their future is about the word to choose. And so to talk to them about choosing, making a conscious choice to do that. And vocabulary, I think all of us as parents and professionals should be watching our vocabulary pretty carefully. We throw some things out that might not be helpful. Just for example, I can't imagine the circumstance where it's helpful to talk about a good college. What the heck is a good college? I don't know. There might have been one for you that wouldn't have been for me. Or safety schools, or just certain vocabulary. If we can just check in with ourselves, check our vocabulary, I think that can change the way students look at their options. Are there words that you hear from families where you think that's really very highly charged and might make a difference?
I'll tell you, one of the simplest alarm bell words for me is a 2-letter one. We.
Oh.
We are interested in the University of Oregon. Well, there's a part of that I really like the sound of. We are thinking about going pre-med. Those kinds of things are immediate signs to us that this may not be what the student has thought about, envisioned, and been a part of. So that simple 2-letter word, really be judicious about how it ever shows up, not just when you walk up to somebody at a college fair table, but even when you walk into Saturday night dinner table. Well, what are we looking at for college right now? Your student may be going, no way, that may be shutdown language. So I'd start there. A lot of these things we could rattle off would probably, many of them stem from there. The idea of a choice versus a fallback position, the idea of looking at a college because I like the way that would look as a decal in our back window more than the other one. Those are some of the broader concepts that I think really start to get downright toxic for us.
It's like remembering that when you say where your child is going off to college in that cocktail party moment, that's a moment, and the child will be spending 4 years, if they're lucky, at that place, and that's going to matter more. I think the question of vocabulary also ties into rethinking our own agenda, and are we trying to impose that, our values, or are we listening to their values? I think it's really hard to do, and I remember many times with my kids where there would be a thought inside my head that, thank goodness, I did not let escape my mouth. And one that I remember really well is when my daughter Georgia said, Mama, I've been recommended to take AP US History. I don't want to take AP US History. I don't like AP US History. Do I have to take AP US History? And what was happening in my head was, oh my God, she's not going to take AP US History. What's going to happen? And what came out of my mouth, thank goodness, was, what a sensible way for you to be thinking. If that's not a course that you're going to enjoy, I think you're really smart to be thinking about it. And if there's a college that turns you down because you didn't have AP US History, probably wasn't the right college in the first place.
If I can, one other little thing I'll add here.
Do.
I would recommend before they start applying anywhere, you get yourself into a mindset of where they applied or where they got in is a very private piece of information, not a very public piece of information. What you want is kind of like, all of you have applied for jobs at least once. You don't go around introducing yourself, listing all the places you didn't work or that didn't hire you. You talk about where you are. It's a very similar process for your students. And you don't want that to become part of the labeling or the stress or the pressure. So don't make that the cocktail party discussion at all, or in the halls of the high school. You just don't talk about where you apply.
I've talked to kids about not sharing their SAT scores, their PSAT scores,
Also good.
Keeping it private. And I pretty much never talk about the job I had where I was fired. Not very often.
Oh, we all know about that, Al.
Till tonight. So living where we live, and maybe where you live too, I think it's easy to be kind of bitten by the prestige bug. Another sentence that students I've taught will remember that I've said over and over again is selectivity and quality are not synonymous. And clearly, choosing a college based on its ranking or its selectivity is not necessarily a recipe for a really good fit, and sometimes the reverse is true. What are your thoughts about rankings, prestige, selectivity?
Honestly, the main thing is I don't think about them much at all.
Yay.
Apparently we do well, and a few of our alumni will get mad if we don't list that stuff off every now and then. There's way too much that goes into these, especially in the fine-tuning sense. It amazes me and disappoints me how much people, not so much in my profession, but the people we report to sometimes, will really even get caught up about being 17th when they were 16th last year. Or for that matter, getting all that proud of themselves if they move from 17 up to 16 or whatever numbers I just gave. So certainly these things are to some extent beauty contests. When you get into things like what College Navigator does, like some other things that I'm speaking very much in shorthand here because I know time's flying by tonight, but something even like the University or Indiana University's study on the national study of student engagement are examples of getting past numbers and into, no, really, what happens after you go there type questions.
Okay, say that one again, because I'd love for people to use it. The National Study for Student Engagement.
Yeah, I may be getting it a little wrong, but the acronym is definitely NSSE, sometimes called NSSE. And IU coordinates this, and last I heard, I think it was about 150, 200, maybe even 300 colleges participate. We survey our students on their way in, and then 3 years later on their way out, to find what they were looking for in college, what ended up mattering most, what surprised them, what was less important than they thought it would be. Now again, here's the problem. People want a list, and they want to see where they are on it. This requires you to read. It requires you to look into stuff, but Nessie's a great resource in that way. And you should get past those numbers and those quick things. The great quote, by the way, from Groucho Marx, not Karl Marx, Groucho Marx, is this old classic, I would never want to join a club that would have me as a member. And it's this weird American psychology, I think, about, well, if it's easy to get into, it must not be good. Really infects us a lot. And so really stay away from these lists because it has nothing to do with the real question, which is this the right place for me? Or in your case, for your student. And they will let you know if it's the right place for them.
And another great resource that I have handed to so many parents and students is Frank Bruni's book called Where You Go Is Not Who You'll Be. It's, if I had to narrow my library down to one college admission book, it would probably be that. The other thing I kept thinking as I worked at Menlo Atherton for a long time is if I thought that there were only 20 or 30 colleges worth going to, I couldn't have done that job. It would be too depressing. What we know is how many there are that can be just great and be the right place. We're going to wrap up in just a minute and get to your questions, but on a really different topic, the topic of paying for college, I've found that in many families, family finances are really not a topic for discussion. And then suddenly you're in this new world where you do need to talk about it, and you do need to talk about which colleges might be affordable. It does need to be addressed well before students apply. And it used to be true that your thoughts about what a college might cost for your family were pretty much of a guess. Now there are some really excellent tools that can help a family determine roughly what a college might cost for that family. So it makes that discussion a little bit more realistic. What about in your family, or what about in your office? Can you talk about your 3 fits?
Absolutely, and there's a lot of variations on this, but I think for a lot of us, when we talk about a student finding, again, where is that right place for me? The 3 columns I put that idea of fit into would either be the academic. Is this a place where I can succeed and keep up in the class and they teach the things I want to study? The social fit, will I have fun when I'm not in class? And all the parents go, but not too much fun. And that 3rd fit is this financial fit part. I see a lot of families, and from a work perspective, we get frustrated for the last minute surprises of the bad kind that come from this, but oftentimes we see parents will do a great job letting go on the academic and social fit part. They will just let that student go. But when it comes to financial, all kinds of weird things go up. And just like we talked with you about this notion of about academic and social fit, stemming from things that you do for a long period of time in a developmentally appropriate way, the idea of understanding how money has to do with possibilities is also something that shouldn't be just plopped out there in the middle in front of everybody in April of your 12th grade year when you say, well, I know you applied to these 8 schools, but only one of them is even possible for us. That's one of the saddest things we have in our office. And so every family's got different finances, every family's got different ways and just needs they have to discuss this. But I think one of the things my wife and I are most proud about what we did with our kids going into this is we helped them understand how this stuff played into it. Filling out something like the FAFSA, which is one of the common federal forms for financial aid, or if your students are applying to certain private schools, there's this form called the CSS, which is sort of kind of the same thing, but a little different. We not only allowed, but made our students, our son and daughter, each play a part in filling this out and understanding some stuff. And if any of you don't want your students to know this, then how are you going to explain what is or isn't possible later on? I'd say the one other piece of advice on top of that I'd give is not just to include your students in the financial fit discussion, but for your own benefit, don't think of this in the freshman year sense. So we see a lot of families think through what it takes to get through year one. And we love the nobility and the care and the love for your son or daughter behind saying something like, this is what we've worked towards all our lives. It's the most important investment we'll ever make. You don't worry about it. But they've done that planning and made sacrifices to get through year one. And we'd hate, and you would hate to see year two be, well, we can't do that again, or a third year in a row and a fourth year in a row. So as you do this with your students, make sure for yourself you think this out. I'll tell you, both my son and daughter are just poster children for going on to grad school. One of them is in grad school now. She's going to do her PhD next. I said, great. But we have to think that way. Help your students understand, if this is what's possible right now, then if you want to do the study abroad or this or that, or you want that residence hall with the hot tub, I hear some residence halls have hot tubs.
And the climbing wall.
None of ours. Well, we have a climbing wall, but not in a residence hall. But, helping them understand these things take money. And even if it's something that's not that hard for you, and great for you if that's the case, make sure they understand that piece of this. If you've got multiple students, you need to see that big picture and help your son or daughter help them see that too.
Well, when I was thinking about sending my older daughter to college, I realized that the one way I could make it work would be by selling my other two children.
Well, that's a pro tip. Yes.
But actually, in our family, what happened with this conversation was it turned to a discussion of borrowing, because student loans and parent loans can sometimes be a way to help pay for college. And yet, for many families, there are either cultural or personal or financial barriers to borrowing to pay for college. These are conversations that can't wait till, as Jim said, your student says, here's where I've been admitted. And especially if you have more than one child. We need to wrap up. I just want to say that the families I've seen that have been most successful are the ones where the parents have allowed the students to talk about the terms on which parent support will be offered. And that's a conversation probably a little bit different from ones that you've had with your kids before, but I think it's really important to ask your student, to say to your student, I'd like to be the best possible support to you through this process. What would that look like to you? And they'll have ideas. They may say, I don't want to talk about this every night. Can we talk about this once a week? I don't want to hear you reminding me about deadlines. Can we just put them on the fridge? I don't want to talk about this unless I bring it up, or whatever it may be. But I think if you can help them on their own terms, that's what's going to be most successful. And then I think we've talked a little bit, or I've mentioned the word a couple times about the joy. What about the joy? Where is the joy? You don't want to find that this is a time of clashing with your kid. You want to find that this is a time of self-discovery that you're collaborating with them on. Are you enjoying it? What do you think?
It's their joy, not yours. It's not about whether you're happy here, right?
Okay.
So I'd have to say that. This is their decision. It's going to last a lot longer than that mentioned at a cocktail party, right? I think you mentioned that earlier. This has ultimately got to be a decision that they know what's behind it. And so we had a lot of fun with that. I think we really did have a lot of joy around what our students did. My kids are each their own thing. They're very different. But either way, if they are really feeling like they're the ones making the choices and trying the things and failing as well as succeeding, all of that's going to bring joy, I think.
I, I used to tell students, you can really have a lot of fun in this process and enjoy it. They were skeptical at first, but sometimes they realized this was true. I was going to say one other thing about the financial piece, that for our oldest child, I remember saying, here's what you want to do. This will take a lot of borrowing. We will do this because this is our value. Other families might choose to do something different. And then there was an actual moment where my two other children came to me and said, you know, we're watching this. She's in debt. You're in debt. We don't want to do that. We're going to go to a college where we can graduate without debt for any of us. And I said, you know, very thoughtful, lovely of you, but if you want to do what she's doing, we'll make that somehow work too. It would just involve more borrowing. But I thought that was interesting that their perspective was, we see this, it's not what we want for ourselves. They both graduated without debt.
One way to look at this is that coming out debt-free can be a great thing, but just for the devil's advocate moment here, if you do something like buy your son or daughter a car after they finish high school, or even before, that's one of those things that may cost as much as a year at a Cal State, for example. I don't know, depends on the car, right? But it starts depreciating the minute you drive it off the lot. That higher education degree increases in value the longer you put into it. So I've seen a lot of families think through this process that way and understand that it is something that will definitely and literally pay dividends for them. But also keep in mind, again, there's no need to go into that debt if you could find ways to avoid it.
So there.
Yeah.
So there's some great questions in here, and the first one I want us to tackle relates to something that we haven't talked about yet, but that I think is really important, which is parenting once your child has gone off to college. So someone in our audience says, my son's fortunate to have acceptances to multiple colleges. They're all good fits for various reasons. How best can I guide him through the decision without overstepping? I love the question. And then we can even go on a little bit, like once he's there, what happens to parenting? It doesn't end. Surprise, it doesn't end.
Yeah, I hear within this the finishing, making the where to go process, and then after they get there. So let's deal with it chronologically. I throw out the concept that if all of these are great fits, then probably the answer to your question is do very little now, but mainly speak when spoken to. I think some of us have the kind of students that really like to bounce a question or two off of us, and they really need our thoughts to get their answer. But let me tell you how my daughter is. If she asks me A or B, my saying A usually leads her to pick B. Do any of you have that at your house?
Never happened to you,
Thank
right?
you. So keep that in mind. It's not your ego on the line here, so just let it be. They may need you to be a sounding board, and during this time, again, if they've got some great choices, thumbs up, and just see what they want to ask you about. And as much as it's about all three of those fits, too. So you've got things to contribute to that conversation and that decision process on those different fronts. Once they get to college, let me tell you one of the things you're going to hear at any of these colleges when you go for summer orientation. And by the way, they'll pull you into the students-only session and the parents-only session or the families-only session. Your students are going, yes. And actually, you should be going, yes. Because one of the things you can say is, I'm now going to ask the dean of students all those questions that my daughter would elbow me about if I asked with her in the room. That's okay. That's why we do this. But you're going to start to hear things like the acronym FERPA. You're going to hear things about how we're not even allowed to talk to you because your son or daughter is now 18. It is only with them that we will have that conversation. So that's going to be a real moment.
Especially financial aid.
Absolutely. No professor will want you calling them to ask why your son got the C.
And yet, it happens.
And still pretending to be the student when they make that phone call. Please just don't. But no, that transition is going to be one where there's going to be a time where they will probably push you out. not because you have nothing to say, but because they don't want to be hearing it. And again, with my son and daughter, it's unfolded very differently between the two of them. I barely laid eyes on my daughter except for when she wanted to come see my son, who was younger, in band concerts. Our son has actually come home maybe 5-6 weekends over the first 10 weeks of his college career because he missed his cats, and he says he wanted to watch something that was HBO. And he brought home his laundry, and it may have been because he wanted to see us. We may never know.
That's funny. I remember when my older daughter went off to college about a quarter of a mile away from our house, I was so fearful of interfering with her college experience that I never went there, I never called her, I never communicated with her at all. And then finally, after about 6 months or something, I thought, wait a minute. If she'd gone to one of those other colleges where she'd been admitted, I'm sure I would have called occasionally, maybe sent a note, maybe sent a little care package. I was overreacting to trying to not interfere. And she didn't come home a lot, but I noticed as the years went on, she came home more and more when she wanted to study or bring friends over for free food or whatever. But they ask you a lot less. What do you think about this? Once they're gone, they have their advisors, they have other people who are playing those roles. Here's a different flavored question. How might a student's desire to play a college sport have an impact on the structure and timing of the whole process, and I assume on the parent role in it?
Well, we don't do athletics at the University of Oregon, so I really can't help with that question. No, in all seriousness, and again, this is one of these, it could be an entire presentation sometimes, so we'll keep this brief, but whoever asked this is the kind of thing you're welcome to come catch us afterwards. But a general answer to this would be that your students, especially who are going for recruited athlete positions at some of the most prominent level institutions, so what we call D1 or Division I, Stanford, Cal are examples of that. This can have a big impact on timing especially. So sports that recruit for certain things at certain times of the year, even in 11th versus 12th grade, might really do a number on these kind of ritual, otherwise predictable calendars of deadlines and all this. Again, we're back to our earlier thing tonight. Your college counselor is a genius on this stuff. And if you start with them, that's where you're supposed to start. The NCAA book, of course, we all look at it online now, but I think if you printed it out, it'd be this thick. Governs a host of things we can and can't do at certain times in certain ways. But mainly understand that athlete status will affect timing. I think there's a lot of myths out there about how much it'll affect the answer as a yes or no. But I'll tell you, if you look at all the recruited athletes on my campus at any given time, the average GPA test score type information is within hundredths of a point of the rest of my freshman class. And so if anything, those of you out there who think, oh, students who are recruited athletes get very different treatment, it's a lot less likely than you think. And there's a lot of great support that comes for those students that are doing well.
Have you seen parents play a completely different role in the admission process with athletes? I know sometimes parents have, helped more with the videos that are sent or the resumes. Or
That is completely divorced from offices like mine, so I really don't feel like I know much of that kind of thing.
Okay.
Sorry.
Nope, no problem.
Meaning don't send me the videos.
They're fun to watch. This is a good question, and I think I know several answers to it, but I'm hearing that a lot of students are bouncing back home freshman year. Why is this happening, and how can parents prevent it? Well, I don't know if parents can prevent it, but I can tell you a couple reasons I saw for it happening. One is, Jim talked about the 3 fits, and if you ignore the financial fit, that can happen. And I've seen this with my students from here, from the Boys and Girls Club, from the library group. Families will say, we'll make this work. And you need to push back a little bit and say, exactly how are you going to make this work? Because it is painful to bounce back after the freshman year. But I think what I've seen even more is students who were just not quite ready in one way or another for that experience. And I actually have a little file of letters from students who went off to four-year college, bounced back, started at a community college, and when they went back to a four-year college, they were so ready. Students who take a gap year are often really ready for college. And by a gap year, I don't mean you write a check for $7,000 and your student does some sort of canned program. Go ahead, but I'm not a big fan of doing that as a gap year. To me, a gap year is a student figures out something meaningful that he or she would like to accomplish or attempt over some time that's less structured. And one of my kids did that and was so ready for college by the time that gives it away, by the time he started, it was, and he was a year younger than students in his grade level, so that makes a difference too. What have you seen about students leaving Oregon or Washington, the other places you were, Colorado, after a year?
Well, I do want to offer a little ray of sunshine within one piece of this, and that is that even though it can be devastating, I'd also counter that by saying to transfer, to switch institutions, is perfectly okay, and it shouldn't ever be seen as a stigma or a problem. But it is sometimes for regrouping reasons or because things weren't going well. A lot of us institutions don't do the follow-up we should when students leave to learn what we could have done better. And I think we very much need to do that as higher ed institutions, is not say, oh, that student wasn't ready after all.
I would like to see that because
we need to say, were we ready for that student?
One of my students just left her community college away, and she was being severely bullied. And she told one of her teachers about it, but no one from the administration of that college ever said, why did you leave in the middle of a week? What was going on there for you? Why did that happen? I agree that moving from one institution for another doesn't need to be traumatic, but if it's something you could anticipate, like maybe you're not quite ready, that would not be terrible.
If I can, let me throw out one thing that we look at with high school seniors that we often wonder how it connects to this. And that is that you'll hear a lot of admissions officers talk about, even though overall we want to see strong grades, the right courses, test scores, blah, blah, blah. A lot of us will really put emphasis on what you're doing your senior year. And keep in mind that a lot of us have application deadlines so early that we make decisions without even knowing how you're doing your senior year. And if you haven't heard this term, get used to the phrase, senioritis is real. Because some students, as they get ready for this, they get so burnt out that they have a horrible 12th grade time. Their grades tank. Worst case, some offers of admission get pulled back at the end. Related to this question we're talking about right now, though, maybe that's an early warning sign of a student who, if they don't cope with this, face it, deal with it, figure out what's going on, maybe they are going to be one of those people that bounces back for the unfortunate reasons. I think it's neat when we see some students let this be part of their education to say, maybe I need some kind of gap, some interlude. And so again, this still becomes a very individualized thing, but we want students to be able to see what's the thing I could do that could get my spark going again. I always say we want to see a student use their senior year as a springboard, not a rest stop. But if they are so burned out on this kind of stuff that they need that rest stop, then why on earth should you be thoughtlessly careening into this very different new environment if you haven't figured that stuff out yet? So again, this even comes back to this, when would a non-traditional path be a good one?
If you stop to think about it, they have been marching lockstep through education for a very long time. And I don't think colleges want to be scraping these children up off the floor because they have melted in a stress ball. To refresh, to take the opportunity to refresh. It is not a terrible idea.
Now, the one counterpoint to that would be, if you just started figuring things out your senior year, you don't want to lose those good habits, or I finally figured out this or figured out that. So there's their other kind of bookend to that.
Momentum. Okay, I think we have time for another question or two. How are we? Oh, I love this. What do you suggest students write about in their college essays? Do they need to do a summer trip or internship? And what about a family business? I'll just take this first and then pass it on to Jim. They don't need to do anything. They should write about who they are, and they should stop trying to figure out what does a college want to see. A lot of energy gets expended in thinking, what do they want? What do they want to see from me? And what they want to see from you is you, the authentic you, who you are. That's going to take a lot of different forms. As far as what you do, what they do during the summer, there is no such thing as need to. One of the most successful students I know, in any way you want to define success, is someone who spent summers at the family place on the lake, chilling, enjoying time without internet access, surviving that, writing a really neat college essay about what it was like to be someplace with grandparents and babies. And now you don't all need to run out and buy a place by the lake, but that was his genuine, authentic experience. And another one I remember so well is the student who worked at the hardware store every summer and also wrote about that for college essays. There aren't rules, there isn't a need to, there isn't a should, and any time spent trying to guess what a college wants to see, I think is time wasted. What do you say?
I'll say this with kindness, but let me start by saying I don't want an essay whose topic was something a parent came home and told the student to write about. So let's keep that in mind. There's two main things college admissions offices get out of that, and I'm not even going to call it the essay. Let's call it the writing section. Yeah. Because most of us, we're on the Common App. We have students fill out one of, 6 different prompts?
Right, plus the University of California doesn't use essays. They use personal insight questions. Yep.
Technically, the Common App doesn't have 6 prompts. It has limitless prompts because one of them is topic of your choice, right? So we want to know 2 things from those writing sections, and none of them is, well, which question did you pick? We want to know how well you write, and whatever you decided to write about, what we learn about you from what you wrote. Those 2 things both matter. Sometimes one helps us more than the other with what we need to do, and we mainly want it to be the student talking to us. I'm sure there's all kinds of detailed advice that other colleges might give, but I always say a great place to start is, especially at campuses that have a lot of applications and are not going to do an interview with you. If you were to have a chance to sit in this great chair I've got next to my desk while I read your application and say, by the way, here's what else you should know, put that in there. It's that simple sometimes. But also keep in mind that when we say the writing section, this personal statement, this main thing that's there, is one of possibly several things you'll get a chance to do. We have something called the special circumstances box at my campus where we can say, hey, is there anything impacting your academics that you want to talk with us about aside from your main essay, like low grades or a personal hardship going on? I love that on the Common App and most other places, we not only let you list up to 10 activities, but we give you a little box where you can say something about it. Those are like micro essays, and it's a chance for me to know, gosh, every summer this person went and did X, and now I know why they did it. I know something about them. Great book, by the way, to mention tonight, by a very complicated figure in our profession, Mary Lee Jones, who used to be at MIT, called Less Stress, More Success. I don't know if you know that book. The American Pediatric Association put it out with her. One of the greatest things I always like that Mary Lee would talk about is that it is a delightful thing to find what you don't enjoy and stop doing it, and to not shy away from putting that in your application. So I'm one person who, when we see your essays, your activities, little essays, I would love to know something you found out you don't enjoy, because you probably learned something about yourself from that too. So have fun with all these topics, but don't go home and tell anybody what to write tonight.
I love the University of California personal insight questions, which are what they replaced their essays with, because they weren't getting what they needed from the essays. And I read hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these every year. They have 8 questions. Students pick 4 of them. Again, it doesn't matter which ones they pick. And they simply are supposed to answer the question. And when I've read a set of 4 for a student that I've never even seen before, if they've chosen well, I know who they are. I'll tell you a sort of a sad story, but then we'll have to end with something happier. Was a wonderful student I knew when I was at MA who came in and showed me his Common App essay, and he'd written this wonderful essay about being an introvert. And I read it. There were no red flags that he was a sociopath. There were no red flags that he didn't have friends or never did anything with other people. It was beautiful, and it was at around the time of the book that came out called Quiet, a book about the place of introverts in our society and how important they are. And it was beautiful, and I told him, I said, you know what? I think I put a comma in here. Don't change anything. This is beautiful. This is who you are. And he came back the next day with his essay, and he said, my parents won't let me send this. And I said, why not? And they said, he said, because they think that if colleges know that I'm an introvert, they won't want to have me. And I said, oh, let's reassure your parents. I would be so glad to meet with them. Let me explain some things to them. You know, they can't have an entire campus filled with raging dynamos. They need to have some thoughtful people just like you. And he came back the next day. He said, they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to do it. But my mom fixed the essay, and here's what she did. And I read the whole essay, and everywhere he'd used the word introvert or introverted, she'd substituted the word independent, which I don't know about you guys, but those are not synonyms.
I'm going to be very clear. This is the kind of story that gives me nightmares and
Yes.
freaks me out for the student.
Yeah.
I'll just be very clear.
Well,
This
all
is
right.
a worst case scenario.
I'll be clear. I cried after he'd left my room because this was a beautiful human being, and that is what happened to his college essay. And it made me sad, so now we have to talk about something happier.
I do want to add one thing onto this. I've been at
Do
a
it.
few of these panels lately, and I think it's Jeff Schiffman at Tulane who I need to credit this to. I think Jeff's the one that I've heard saying this. Don't ever, ever tell your students they need to be well-rounded. Tell them that we're looking for well-rounded classes. We want an incoming class that has variety. We want the introverts with the independents, with the leaders. We want that mix, and they should want that for themselves. It's a great thing, and so they don't need to be the end-all, be-all student, because none of us want a bunch of freshmen that all look the same.
We missed a couple of questions, but some of them we had discussed already, and some you're welcome to approach us afterwards. But in this book, Dear Parents, I just found something that I think sums it all up. It's their journey, not ours. As parents, we should always keep that in mind. We can and should guide, cajole, and even nag occasionally. Well, I don't know about that. We should challenge them to think harder, do their best work, and we should remember that college is not the ultimate goal. It's only the very beginning of their lives as adults. And we should not forget to enjoy them while we have the privilege of witnessing their progress and their successes. And I love that, and I hope that this has been helpful to you, and that the handout will be helpful as you take that home and think, these questions I can keep asking myself these questions.
If I could work in one last little supposed pearl of wisdom tonight. Again, I mentioned that I've had 2 kids go through this. You've had 3. And I'll tell you, we've talked a lot about this. One of the biggest gifts I think you can give to the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, whatever you've got in your family. I really felt like this worked out well for us. Make your students that aren't the first one in the house to go through this feel like they are the first one to go through this in your house. It's one of the simplest gifts I think you can give them. And kind of like we talked earlier tonight about saying, you know, you shouldn't be walking down the hall saying, well, here's where I've applied and here's where I've gotten in. I am confident my son does not even remember where my daughter applied, because it never needed to be about that even within our house. And we had a lot of fun, my wife and I did. And again, part of this is seeing the burnout with other families made me realize, wow, we need to think about this. If any of you are here tonight thinking, oh, it's important that I do this. This is my oldest going off to college. Capture, bottle up what you've got for that tonight and put it on the shelf for when the second one goes, and bring just that much excitement. Try to forget everything you've learned and relearn it with that next student in your house. And I think it'll be a really great gift you can give each other. I think it's one of the things we really love the most about how things worked out with our two, and I wish that and many, many other things for all of you in this process. Good luck with it all.
Thank you.